Good day, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, Maintain Health, Safety, and Comfort with Proper Indoor Air Quality, being presented by Frank DiPaolo. We really appreciate you joining us today. My name is Ron Pilkwitz, and I will be moderating today's webinar. Because you may want to watch this webinar again, it will be recorded and posted on Belimo's YouTube site. And we will have a question and answer session at the end of this presentation, and we'd like to hear from you. So at any time, I invite you to type your questions into the question box, and I will read them aloud during the question and answer session. You don't have to wait till the end to put it in. Frank will answer as many questions as we have time for, and if we don't get to your question, please know that you will receive an answer directly from Frank via email. I would now like to turn this presentation over to Frank DiPaolo. Thank you, Frank.
Thanks, Ron. So our agenda today will be what is indoor air quality, how it relates to health, comfort, and safety. We'll take a look at some of the main points of the ASHRAE reopening guidelines, and then look at how Belimo can provide solutions and benefits in relation to indoor air quality. After that, we will open it up for some questions. So what is indoor air quality? Indoor air quality is defined by the EPA as the air quality within and around buildings and structures, especially as it relates to the health and comfort of building occupants. Understanding and controlling common pollutants indoors can help reduce your risk of indoor health concerns. There is a big emphasis on IAQ in the HVAC industry, as it is very relevant to what is happening with the pandemic in the world today. So it is important to understand IAQ and evaluate your building for improvements for a number of reasons. The first being the amount of time we spend indoors. If we look at this chart, we can see how much time on average a person spends indoors compared to out. 68.7% is in a residence, 5.4% is in our workplace environment, 1.8% in restaurants, 5.5% in a vehicle, 11% in other indoor locations, and only 7.6% outdoors. This makes a total of 86.9%, almost 90% of our time spent in an indoor environment. Just from this alone, we can see why IAQ has become a bigger discussion. What is in indoor air that can impact our health and comfort? Some of them are as follows. Airborne particles can consist of pet dander, carbon monoxide, dust, pollen, and wood stove emissions. Examples of household odors and gases can include odors, radon, pet smells, cigarette smoke, sink or drain smells. Volatile organic compounds, or VOC for short, include paints, chemicals, carpet emissions, and cleaning supplies, whereas microorganisms are bacteria, mold, fungus, and viruses. Now let's take a look at some of these to understand the harmful effects they can have to our health. Airborne particles are measured in microns or micrometers. 1 micron is 1,000th of a millimeters. Particles under 10 microns are easily inhaled and they can reach your lungs. Particle matters that are 2.5 microns can penetrate the respiratory system. Ultrafine particles, in which are smaller than 0.1 microns, are so small that they can penetrate your bloodstream and be transported throughout your body, causing even further various health risks. To put this into perspective, an average single piece of hair is about 70 micrometers in diameter, making it 30 times larger than the largest fine particle. Airborne particles can be dangerous to our well-being. One direct link to poor indoor quality and health is something called sick building syndrome. Sick building syndrome is used to describe situations in which building occupants experience acute health and comfort effects that appear to be linked to time spent in a building, but not specific to an illness or cause that can be identified. $60 billion of revenue is lost alone to sick building syndrome a year. Breathing in these types of particles can even cause longer lasting health effects such as respiratory disease, heart disease, and cancer. Maintaining a higher IAQ will improve your occupant's health greatly. Along with the VOC sources shown previously, VOC can also come from sources such as softeners, perfumes, and cleaning agents. These pollutants have been studied to be 2.5 times greater indoors than outdoors. When exposed to VOC, various health impacts have been linked to them. These include sore throats, itchy eyes, irritated skin, fatigue, headaches, and chemical reactions. The level that is acceptable is dependent on the substance. Monitoring VOC levels can help keep your occupants' safe and healthy from these effects. CO2 is talked about quite often with indoor air quality. The main reason is that it has been linked in many studies showing that maintaining a certain level of CO2 will improve your IAQ. CO2 is odorless, colorless, and tasteless, making it that much more important to monitor as you won't know from your senses. CO2 is measured in parts per million, and there are various health risks when CO2 levels rise. 400 ppm is a normal outside level of CO2. When levels start to reach 1000 ppm and get to 2000 ppm, the occupants of the space will have symptoms such as drowsiness. 2 to 5000 ppm is where adverse health effects will happen, such as headaches and loss of concentration. And 5000 is the permissible amount for daily workplace exposure. Over 40,000, you'll be getting to various very dangerous levels that can start to cause oxygen deprivation. And ASHRAE discusses the range of CO2 levels that they recommend in the reopening guidelines that we'll discuss later. Relative humidity is also another important factor when it comes to IAQ. Relative humidity is how much water vapor is in the air compared to how much it could hold at that temperature. So it is taken into factor both humidity and temperature. Relative humidity is shown as a percentage. So here we see that a lower relative humidity and a higher relative humidity, you have a higher chance of exposure to unwanted effects from bacteria, viruses, and respiratory infections. 40 to 60% relative humidity limits the exposure and dramatically reduces the risk of disease transmission. This range is also an ASHRAE recommendation in their reopening guidelines. Not only do we want to protect occupants from harmful effects of poor indoor air quality, but we want them to be comfortable in the workplace environment. Comfort and proper IAQ have a direct impact on productivity. Poor indoor air quality leads to a loss of $220 billion a year. There have been studies done that have proved with higher IAQ productivity increases. One study done by the World Green Building Council has shown an 11% increase in employee productivity as a result of increased fresh air to the workstation and a reduction in pollutants. Another done by Harvard was a cognitive test study and showed 60% higher results in a green space than those in a typical office setting. It went up by 100% with improved ventilation and no VOCs. Inadequate ventilation is one of the main causes of poor indoor air quality due to design or not having the proper setup. Increasing ventilation systems can lead to improved productivity and well-being. So what can we do to maintain proper IAQ? In the easiest of terms, we can monitor, check, and ventilate. So we can monitor VOC and CO2, monitor temperature and humidity, relative humidity, have a DCV system installed, check and monitor pressurization, change our filters more frequently, as well as monitoring them with a differential pressure switch. Purge before occupancy and post-occupancy. Maintain ventilation. Bring in more outside air when possible, including running your dedicated outdoor air systems. Have exhaust fans installed. And check your control sequences and control devices for proper setup and that everything is working at its optimal performance. ASHRAE also has recommendations when it comes to reopening guidelines due to the pandemic. They can be found on their website, but some of the highlights include review HVAC programming to provide flushing 2 hours before and post occupancies. This includes operating exhaust fans as well as opening the outside air damper. Run the system on minimum outside air when unoccupied. Operate in occupied mode when people are present in the building, including times when the building is occupied by a small fraction of its allowable capacity. Maintain proper indoor air temperature and humidity to maintain human comfort, reduce potential for spread of airborne pathogens, and limit potential for mold growth in building structures and finishes. ASHRAE Standard 55 recommends a temperature range of 68 to 70 degrees dry bulb and recommend limiting the maximum relative humidity to 60% and the minimum relative humidity of 40% if it's appropriate for your building. If demand control ventilation systems using carbon dioxide sensors are installed, operate the system to maintain maximum CO2 concentrations of 800 to 1,000 parts per million in occupied spaces. A note on DCV systems is that when in a pandemic crisis, ASHRAE suggests to consider adjusting to maximize outdoor air or disabling operation of DCV if it will not adversely impact operation of overall systems. This is a temporary recommendation while operating under an infectious disease crisis. Now we'll look at Belimo solutions and how we can help you maintain proper IAQ. The first product being the Belimo Zip Economizer. The Zip Economizer has patented zip code technology, which takes the guessing work out of your high limit changeover strategy. Simply enter your zip code during setup and the Zip Economizer will give you the exact setting you need to be for your climate zone to optimize free cooling in compliance with ASHRAE and California Title 24. Both USA and Canada zip codes can be entered in the zip, and this eliminates improper changeover value. The Zip Economizer has adjustable settings such as changing the high limit temperature, your ppm for DCV, how many compressors you want it to recognize. It can recognize up to two 15-ton compressors, so a total of a 30-ton unit, and your minimum ventilation position. There are also over 30 alarms within the zip that will tell you if something isn't functioning properly, such as sensor out of range, helping with maintaining proper IAQ at all times. The plug and play capability of the zip is that if you don't have a module connected, then you don't have to worry about the settings loading up. If you have sensors plugged in for a differential entropy strategy, then it'll recognize it right away and comply to the codes for that specific point. The Zip's Economizer's energy module will maintain proper IAQ and be a solution for ASHRAE's reopening guidelines recommendations in a number of ways. There is an exhaust fan output to make sure that you're getting stale air and harmful airborne pathogens out of your building. Demand control ventilation to monitor and open the damper when it exceeds the ppm set point you set, such as the 800 to 1,000 ppm range recommended from ASHRAE. A remote damper override setting for use with a potentiometer so that you can override the damper position when needed to increase outdoor air coming into your building. There is also an indoor fan output to retrofit 2-speed fan control applications. and a purge functionality for pre and post occupancy to get contaminants out of that zone. The communication module can be used for both remote alarms and BACnet MSTP connectivity. The remote alarm pilot light contact is very useful when an alarm occurs. If this is not utilized, people in the space have no way of being informed that there is a problem with the rooftop unit. If wired properly in conjunction with the RTU alarm circuit, a pilot light located in the space or on the thermostat can be energized to notify people in the space that there is a problem with the RTU. The COM module's BACnet MSTP connectivity can be integrated in your BMS device for ease of use of scheduling and to bring on the RTU earlier if necessary. There are over 75 objects that can be used. There are both readable and writable, and they can be found in the Zip Economizer's installation operation manual. This integration can get the Zip running when you need it to maintain IAQ. Belimo also offers a sensor line of products to monitor IAQ. Belimo humidity sensors are 2% accurate as standard across the range, ensuring the comfort levels in the buildings are controlled to the optimum conditions and comfort levels. Outputs can also be configured to measure enthalpy or dew point for optimum outdoor air ventilation, DCV, and building conditions. Some other features include multi-sensor with selectable output measurement values, up to 4 active temperature measurement ranges, and a sensing element not affected by high humidity and contaminants. Our CO2 sensors are based on dual channel self-calibration and non-dispersive infrared technology, and that applies to all applications. We have integrated temperature, humidity, CO2, and VOC sensors that are maintenance free. Our Belimo air pressure range has some features that include 0-point stability, high accuracy, an auto zero option, 8 field selectable pressure ranges. Belimo also offers a line of airflow control and measurement products. Our airflow control VAV compact actuators use a constant flow offset in order to create pressurization. This can help prevent contaminants from spreading. Some features include integrated pressure sensors, NFC for fast commissions and adjustment, analog, BACnet, and Modbus options for controls. There are a 45 and 90 inch-pounds options, as well as a linear options for unique applications. Our airflow sensor communications module can help create a negative pressure differential when used in conjunction with a reference pickup and a room pickup device. An example would be preventing the spread in a COVID-19 patient's room with negative pressurization, ensuring it's safely exhausted. There are 3 versions available. The first being the VRU-D3-BAC, which is a quasi-static differential pressure sensor and for VAV and duct pressure applications. The VRU-M1-BAC is a membrane differential pressure sensor suitable for contaminated air and also for VAV and duct pressure applications. The VRU-M1R-BAC is a membrane differential pressure sensor suitable for contaminated air and for room pressure applications. All versions are BACnet Modbus compatible. They all are NFC compatible. Just a note on this is that they are not listed in the 2021 PGPL, and the current version is not UL listed, but we wanted to get out there for those who would like the product and all the functions it can help with your facility requirements for maintaining proper IAQ. So in summary, indoor air quality is the quality of indoor air, especially as it relates to health and comfort. Poor IAQ directly results in risks to occupancy health. Improved IAQ will result in higher comfort and productivity of occupants. Should monitor, check, and ventilate. Review ASHRAE codes and guidelines in order to be compliant and also ready your facility during a pandemic or reopening process. And that Belimo offers reliable solutions to ensure health, safety, and comfort with proper IAQ. That concludes the presentation part of the webinar. Thanks so much for attending and learning about IAQ and how it related to comfort, health, and safety. My name is Frank DiPaolo. I am products responsible for the Belimo Zip Economizer. And now Ron will open it up for some questions.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Frank. Before we move on to questions, I'd like to remind you to follow Belimo on social media to keep informed about what's happening. And at this time, if you do have any questions, please jot them into the question box and Frank will answer as many as we can. But if he does not get your question, rest assured that you will receive an email directly from Frank. You can also email myself at training@us.belimo.com and I will be sure that you get an answer from Frank. So again, please type your questions in. We do have a few that have come in. The first question, Frank, does entering the zip code in the Zip Economizer give you the minimum ventilation position? And what about DCV?
So the zip doesn't set the minimum ventilation position for you. That would be up to your building design and system requirements, as well as for your DCV system. Those aren't ranges that if you put your zip code that the Zip Economizer will give you. That would be something that, again, that your team would need to come up with those values. ASHRAE recommends the 800 to 1000 ppm for the reopening guidelines. And yeah.
Excellent, thank you. Can you talk a little bit more about ASHRAE's reopening guides on filters?
Yeah, sure. ASHRAE recommends MERV 13 filters. That is to help catch smaller particle matter. Just a note on that is that if you're catching more particles, they're going to get dirty more quickly. So monitoring them with a differential pressure or switch is highly recommended.
Okay. Next question, does the type of thermostat matter with the zip?
Yes, you need a 2-stage thermostat. So this is for integrated cooling, which is one of the stages of economizing. So integrated cooling is the first, when your damper will open up 100% and your first stage of mechanical cooling will come on. So you need a Y1 and Y2 call to achieve that. And that is why a 2-stage thermostat is needed for the Zip Economizer.
Okay. What are the negative effects of having a lower high limit changeover with the zip?
So a lower high limit changeover with the zip would mean that you're losing free cooling and energy savings. So for example, if your climate zone requires a 70-degree high limit changeover and you have it set for a range of 65, you're losing all that free cooling and energy savings for your indoor air quality, and your mechanical cooling is going to come on way sooner than it should. So not only energy savings, but for IAQ purposes, you should try to stay in with what ASHRAE recommends and your climate zone details.
Thank you, Frank.
In
We have
which
time
in
for
which the zip definitely accomplishes. You just enter the zip code and it'll tell you what climate zone and your strategy for you.
Thank you. We have time for one or two more questions. Does
Sure.
Belimo offer room sensors?
Yes, Belimo offers passive and active room sensors for temperature, humidity, and indoor air quality measurements.
Okay, last question. Which ASHRAE standards are used for COVID-19?
ASHRAE, so ASHRAE standard 55 was the one for 68, 78 degrees. They also look at 62.1 for ventilation. And that ASHRAE guidelines is just their reopening guidelines process, manual, I would say, reopening guidelines recommendations. It can be found on their website. It offers checklists and such as that. I also did a presentation with our product manager, Eddie Kelly, on the reopening guidelines as well. That has some of that information as well. You can find that on our website too.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Frank. Once again, thank you for attending today's webinar, and thank you again to Frank DiPaolo. Also, please join us for our next webinar on April 14th. Russ Brown will be presenting on our potable water valves, which are certified, safe, and maintenance-free. Thank you so much again. Have a great rest of your day.